Hello, welcome to the webinar, Build Your Own Hype, a Personal Branding Masterclass. I'm glad you could join us. Just a couple of things first. The webinar will be recorded, so we can send it out to you afterwards. And if there's anyone else who you think might want to listen, you can send it through to them as well. And also, if you have any questions, just let us know in the chat box. I'll try and answer a few of them as we go, but any that I can't make, I'll try and get through at the end. We'll have a section there just to run through any questions that are left over. So that said, my name is Oscar Frost. I'm an SEO and content executive at Cognism, and I'm joined by Greg Robertson, a senior SEO and content executive at Cognism. And Greg is also responsible for some personal branding classes internally, where he educates a few of the other Cognism staff. Hi, Greg.
How's it going? How's it going, everyone? Nice to be here. I realize no one can actually answer that question, so hopefully everyone's actually all right.
It's nice to have you here, Greg. So just to run you through a bit of the agenda today. So we're going to be talking about how and why you can invest in your personal brand. So the key pillars of that are setting goals, LinkedIn SEO, imposter syndrome and overcoming it, building momentum, posts that work and measuring success, and finally company branding, which is a section that I'll be talking a bit about myself. So first of all, we're going to get started with setting goals. Greg, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I can do. So I'll just give you a little bit of background of my own journey with personal branding to start with. So around 8 months ago, I decided to invest in my personal brand. For context, I started out with maybe 100-200 connections, and since then I've grown it to over 1.2k, which is it's a pretty achievable number. So that's what I'm hoping everybody can take from this. You can at least reach my level fairly quickly. So yeah, on to setting goals and kind of defining your audience as well. So I'll explain also the reasons why I actually decided to get to my personal brand now. So you'll obviously need to work out reasons for yourself as well, and also who you're going to be aiming your content at. So my first key motivation, was growing my professional network, which a while ago was really small. Before lockdown, I wasn't someone who was really engaging in networking or regularly attending industry events, and I felt like I needed to sort of build connections to make me better at my job. For example, arranging better collaborations with influencers, improving my chances of getting backlinks. Ultimately, I guess just learning more stuff from more experienced people than me. My second key motivation was diversifying my content approach. Up until probably the turn of this year, I was really focused on SEO, and that meant I was living and dying by how keywords ranked. I felt that was kind of unsustainable, and my knowledge was kind of blinkered in a way. So I wanted to kind of open my horizons a little bit. And thirdly, my last motivation was my third motivation was to grow Cognism's newsletter subscribers. So the audience of that newsletter was fellow content marketers, and because of that, as I'm a content marketer as well, I knew the pain points I needed to target and the ambitions I could help them reach. That's before I actually handed that newsletter over to Oscar. So I didn't promote this in my post, but I did include comment CTAs with tracking links on my post. So the idea behind that was to add value to the rest of the content marketing community, obviously for free. And then ideally over time, they'll trust me enough to give their details for extra content, such as a newsletter. Obviously, those details could then be used by the wider sales and marketing teams for a ton of different things. And finally, I wanted to sort of plan my career in a more structured way. So I think I was lucky enough to kind of land on my feet with Cognism, but my professional career to date before that was a little bit of a lottery. So I felt like investing in my personal brand was a really good way for me to take control of my career and I guess join a community that I can potentially call on in the future should I need to do that.
That's great. And I think it's important to set these goals right at the beginning of your journey as well, just because it helps you to keep yourself accountable for the personal brand that you're building. It's good to be able to sort of remember exactly why you're doing it if it ever starts becoming a bit more difficult too.
definitely, because you do find if you don't have any goals and you do start posting, or you have no structure and you start posting, then eventually you will run out or start going around in circles and you'll just give up. And that's happened to me a few times, to be fair, thus far. So I'll be covering some of that later in the presentation. But yeah, like definitely key to start out with goals.
Yeah, definitely. The next section we have here is on LinkedIn SEO. So Greg, why don't you tell us a bit about exactly what LinkedIn SEO is, or what that is to you?
Yeah, so I've just made this term up really. So it's, you know, if you're going to Google it, there's probably going to be nothing on it, because I just thought it sounded cool, basically. Yeah, so the easiest thing, the reason why I called it this is because it's obviously related to search within the LinkedIn platform. So like the easiest thing that you can do to get your personal branding journey started, if you are starting right from the start, is to sort of optimize your bio with relevant keywords. So I think potentially, on the next slide, do you have a screenshot of my profile, essentially? Yeah, there we go. Cool. So as you can see from my sort of header, I've included B2B SaaS content in my sort of headline. That's effectively serving, like, for any content people who are listening, as like a seed keyword. So anyone in the same space looking to connect with like-minded people, kind of like me, like I'm easy to find. So visibility is one key thing. Obviously, if you're trying to grow your network, like people searching for you is one way for people to find it. You can also see that my headline is benefit-led. So to stand out in a crowded space, B2B SaaS companies need to outrank their competitors on Google and steal their traffic. The best way they can do that is to get feature snippets to target keywords. Everyone in B2B SaaS is also like super aware of the need to bridge the gap between marketing and sales. I'm pretty sure Cognizant's done a fair few webinars today on that topic. So I've included to make sales easier in the headline as well, just so that I'm kind of like aware of that and like taking more of a holistic view to content rather than it being kind of siloed off from the wider marketing team. Also on my profile, there's like a couple of hashtags that you can see underneath that headline. That is because I've put creator mode onto my profile. That's pretty easy to do. I think if you just like Google the tutorial, it'd be easy to do. I can't actually remember. You get a prompt sometimes if you haven't done it. But yeah, essentially that means people don't have to connect with you to see the content that you're putting out. They can just follow you, which I think is sometimes a lower ask than connecting with people. Sometimes people have like very strict rules on who they'll sort of like accept and things like that. I'm definitely not one of them, but like the follow is just like it's a bit of a less significant ask for people. So it's kind of more impersonal and easier to just engage that way. Next, onto the featured section. So yeah, on here I've included top performing LinkedIn posts. Kind of sounds obvious, but like in the past I've included kind of like external blogs and things like that. While it's kind of all right to do that, LinkedIn obviously prefers users to stay within the platform. So I think it's best to showcase the LinkedIn content that you've got in there, and also just like serving people content where they are like already is best practice, rather than obviously getting them to leave and do something different. And next up is the about section. So yeah, to sort this section out, I think you probably won't be able to take in everything that's on mine there. I'm sure we can, you can get the recording and pause this and have a look at it. But I'm actually, the more that I look at this doc, like the more I kind of like critique it, because I think you could argue that mine is probably too focused on me, which might seem like a strange thing to say for a personal profile. But I think the thing with a LinkedIn profile is that it's not a CV. Your aim should be to try and help your audience solve their problems and kind of meet their goals. So for me, as I'm not a freelancer, that means I should probably cognize them a little bit more than selling myself in here. So that's a potential improvement point I could do on this. I do think that said, there's definitely room for you to get your personality across and sort of speak about your achievements and sort of like your credibility and things like that. I think it's just a case of getting the hierarchy of information right and just having that sort of benefit-led kind of like I'm going to help you out attitude first is best practice for this for sure, rather than being sort of like self-serving.
Yeah, and I guess you can use that about section almost as like the CTA of your profile. So like that's where you know, you can, if you're a freelancer, get people to reach out to you or learn a bit more about you. But then also if you're working for like a B2B company like you are, it can be where you have a bit more information about the company that you're working for and what they do. So it's sort of almost like a place where you want people to end up when they're going through your profile to take the next step.
Definitely, yeah. And obviously, since I've handed the newsletter over to you, it's no longer in there. But I did used to have a UTM tracking code to sign up to the newsletter right at the bottom there that you can see. So as you say, that was kind of like the CTA. I'm always trying to sort of win people around with my tone and things like that. And but obviously, I'm probably not adding enough value in this section here for them to sign up to that newsletter, and that's what I'd need to do to make that better. But yeah, definitely the CTA is an important thing to have in the about section.
So the next section we have here is on imposter syndrome. So why don't you tell us a bit about what imposter syndrome is and how you can try and avoid that, Greg?
Yeah, so obviously imposter syndrome is like a little bit of a buzzword. I know it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a blanket term that people kind of use now, but I do think it is relevant when you talk about personal brand, because I think there is kind of like a crazy stat about sort of content creation on LinkedIn. It's something like 1 to 2% of people, all the people on LinkedIn are actually creating content, which is sort of, I think, far less than what you'd expect on other platforms, you know, I guess like Facebook, Twitter, things like that. So yeah, I think the reason behind that kind of block is almost like, I think in a professional sphere, people are very scared of going viral with like a stupid opinion or like being savaged by other people in the community because like you don't know enough or whatever like that. And I know, because I've spoken to a ton of people who've said that, and like they're all people who probably know more about like content marketing and marketing more broadly than me. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of people out there who are blocked from kind of creating content and investing in their personal brand. I think sort of if that's you, there are 3 kind of important things to hear. Number 1 is that when you first start posting consistently, just nobody cares at all. Number 2, no matter what level of expertise you have, there's always an audience for you. And number 3, I think disagreements, negative comments, they're all actually positive for your personal brand. So I'll just explain each one of those points a little bit more now. So I think on point 1 about no one caring, basically, sounds a little bit harsh, but ultimately it's true. When your audience is small and unengaged, kind of like the damage you can cause yourself is like really minimal. I would caveat that by saying, like, if you're going to start posting like a QAnon like conspiracy on there, I'd probably like give that a miss. But that's going to bite you. That's going to bite you later on in the day. But anything sort of like just professional and about your job, you're not going to be killed by it. Often, like, you do find on your first post, you might actually do really well, but then if you do start posting consistently, like the numbers drastically fall, and you have to sort of build them back up again. So I think the point about this stage in your personal branding journey is that, like, because no one cares, you can use this time as a testing ground to sort of find your voice, your audience, like experiment with the types of posts people like, experiment with posting times, CTAs, all of that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, if you do that, if you do approach the first stages of your personal branding journey in that way, and you don't expect too much from it, then by the time people actually do start listening, your personal brand will look quite refined, and yeah, you'll seem a lot smarter and together than you did right at the beginning. On point 2, which was sort of like people basically in entry-level roles maybe don't think that they're sort of quote unquote qualified enough to sort of, you know, post LinkedIn content. I think anyone who thinks that is like massively undervaluing the usefulness of their own expertise. I think, you know, every entry level role, for example, the SDRs in Cognizant, like, they have a ton of valuable things to say to other SDRs. And I think, if it was only sort of, sales leaders creating content, then how would SDRs ever get to that stage in their career where they're able to level up? They just wouldn't be able to get there. It would just be a closed shop. There would be no one creating content for you and your level of sort of experience and expertise there and then. So I think just stop overthinking that, basically. And I think, no matter where you are in your career, you'll always have something useful to say to someone. On the final point, in terms of agreeing and disagreeing, and obviously the fear of somebody absolutely savaging you. So I think I read a while ago that 70% of people should agree with your posts and 30% should disagree. And I guess having that balance means you're saying something worth saying. And the chances are, I think if everybody agrees with you, you're probably being a little bit too cautious. And if you are too cautious with it and you're never sort of going to ruffle any feathers, you probably won't get the engagement that you need to sort of really grow your personal brand. So get on people's radars by ruffling a few feathers. You don't need to do it all the time. You don't need to be a contrarian, but put your opinion out there and stick by it, because it's good to have those conversations. And sometimes somebody in the comments might sort of correct you, or they might add something to your point, and you might realize either that you believe that you're right, or actually they were right. So it's also good for personal development as well from that point of view.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it could be quite a good learning experience. Then also, as you said, it's not going to do your page any harm having some interesting conversations happening in your comments or underneath things that you're posting. If you've got people who disagree with you, I think that's great just to get other professional opinions on stuff onto your page.
Yeah. I think always if you're sincere kind of in what you post, and you are trying to add value, no matter what your opinion is, there will be people who respect that. I think if you do go fishing for for people to buy it, basically, then obviously you're going to get found out at some point in the road, and people just kind of get pissed off with you, basically. But as long as you're genuine, as long as you have as long as you're trying to add value, then absolutely stick your opinion out there, and there's nothing wrong with somebody disagreeing with that.
Yeah. This next section we have here is on building momentum and keeping momentum as well. It's definitely an interesting section for me, because I think as many people are, am guilty of building up my personal brand and then letting it slip when when work gets a bit hectic or life tends to sort of take over or grab more of your attention than it was doing before. So I think it's important to sort of understand a few different ways that you can try and keep momentum going despite these challenges that we're going to face.
Yeah, I would 100% also agree with you there. This is definitely something I've experienced. I've definitely run out of things to say because I haven't had sort of structures or routines kind of underpinning what I do. And I think that's just what it's all about. It's just about routine and sort of being strict with that routine and sort of managing yourself. So there are a few practical techniques that you can sort of try out to get yourself into a routine and keep yourself posting. One of the things that one of our sales leaders in Cognizant does, Safe Khan, he's definitely worth a follow if you're sort of into sales content. But he swears by having a content plan. In that content plan, he'll plan out topics that he's going to tackle on certain days of the week, certain days of the month, and that makes sure that he's not sort of scrambling around in the morning thinking of something to say. And that it gives him structure while also I think allowing him to be creative on the day and to sort of maybe just weave in something that a little bit of context that might have just popped up to him that day or whatever. There's a more rigid approach as well that you can try, which is mentioned by a guy called Jason Vanner. He's quite a well-known sort of content marketing influencer. He speaks about bulk writing posts in advance. So I guess all you need to do then is just schedule the posts every day that you want to. And that's going to save you brain power on a daily basis. Also, I think he speaks about it helping to create a narrative because you're writing something all at the same time. So your posts are going to be more interconnected than they would be if you were doing them sort of day to day. And takes care of the times when you're not feeling particularly inspired. There's one final approach which I guess takes elements of both of these things, which I've been trying sort of for the last week or two, because I did get really stuck and stopped posting for ages and like wanted to get back into it, but I realized I needed that kind of structure to underpin me. So to do that, I transplanted the pillar, page, and cluster blog concept from sort of SEO content to personal branding. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, so in content marketing, topic clusters kind of like the offshoots of pillar pages, and a pillar page is a comprehensive top-level breakdown of a particular topic. So if my pillar is B2B SaaS content marketing, because that's what I do, my clusters would include, or my topic clusters, sorry, would include things like content marketing strategy, keyword research, SEO, content marketing metrics, content marketing career advice, all those kind of things. I think using a structure like that and adapting it to LinkedIn, you can get that level of consistency that Jason Vanna talks about without necessarily sort of preparing your post in advance. And yeah, it just prevents against that kind of scattergun approach, I think. So choosing the topic cluster and creating content around that for a set amount of time is going to help your followers, your connections, associate your personal brand with specific topics, which is always good, always strong for brand building. So in my case, I'm currently doing a series of content marketing career tips, organizing those tips into a specific cluster. Obviously, instead, like the blog cluster, like actual structuring on like a website or whatever, you can't emulate that on LinkedIn. Literally, but what you can do instead is sort of like create hashtags for each cluster of content that you create. So in every post that I do about this specific cluster, which happens to be about content marketing career tips, I include that hashtag as a CTA at the end of my posts and obviously direct viewers towards that. I guess the idea behind that is as more people engage with that cluster content, they don't have to kind of, if they're finding value from it, they don't have to scroll through all of my activity and like sift out like some of the other stuff I've posted to find like the value that they need. Instead, they can just navigate through it on the hashtag and sort of like find the value instantly. So just like a point about, I guess, UX, and I think LinkedIn sometimes doesn't help with that. Sometimes if you just rely on your feed, you end up just seeing like 3 or 4 people all the time posting, and you don't see half of the people that you that maybe you want to see or you'd like at least like to know are posting. And I think having sort of like a set time when you're going to end these clusters is good, because again, that just gives you more structure and you can move on to the next topic quite easily. So to do that, all you need to do to sort of like end it would be just create a new hashtag about a new cluster, and you can always return to the cluster topic that you previously finished by using the old hashtag, and it will add all of those tips in quite a linear way to LinkedIn. Again, it just makes it easier over time for people to locate that content. So I do think one thing LinkedIn is kind of terrible for is like, if I saw something like 2 weeks ago that I found was useful on someone's page, like it would take me just ages to find that value. Or if it was a month ago, I've basically just got no chance to these posting every day. Like I just don't have the time to do that. So I think this sort of like works against that kind of like user friendliness in a sense. And obviously having all of that content organized in one place, I think is just better for you to create a community, and it'll help people connect with sort of like the themes that you're talking about, maybe on like a little bit of a deeper level. Not a proven strategy, something that I'm just testing at the minute, but like I've seen a really great LinkedIn sort of content influencer called Erin Balfour doing this. She created a hashtag, I think, called Erin100, sort of 100 content marketing tips that she's been doing for months and months and months. And on there, you can find all of her tips under this one hashtag, which is like great, because she also posts about other things as well, which is not necessarily part of that. So just, yeah, more linear experience for readers and your community.
I guess as well with that example, like having your own narrative to the things that you're creating probably makes it a bit easier for you to come up with the ideas as well, because with the scattergun approach, It's like, oh, what do I think of today? It could be anything. Whereas if you've got that sort of plus their approach just makes it a bit easier to come up with the ideas, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, like when I first started out in content, like I was having it's kind of before I even like discovered SEO or anything like that. And yeah, like you are it's like generally wondering week to week, like what am I going to write about, or like how am I going to do a content plan, because I've got no idea. Like I'm just playing a guessing game basically. Whereas yeah, if you do insert that kind of structure into your routine, then you can at least, you know, do yourself a favor, I guess, day to day. That's much easier than to keep momentum and build momentum.
Yeah, definitely, I completely agree. And we have next here posts that worked and measuring success as well.
Cool. So LinkedIn posts that work. Just before we go into this, like if anybody does want examples of these kinds of posts, I can send them across to people. Like was finding that with the screenshots, some of the posts were just like really big, so it would have been quite kind of hard to like read them and break them down on slides, because they included images as well. But yeah, happy to send over any example posts if anybody does want them. But yeah, number one, progress posts. Yeah, so like you'll have seen on LinkedIn, like anytime there's some kind of like rags to riches kind of narrative, like people absolutely lap it up. So that's 100% something that you can emulate in your content. Obviously, I guess the general story arc of that is you start off bad at something and you become good at something. There's some kind of bumps along the way. I think, you know, to sort of separate yourself from the kind of, there is like a lot of dross content on LinkedIn that kind of uses this and like comes up like just basically clear lies are in there, like about, I don't know, you know, all sorts of stuff about seeing a dog in the street or whatever. So yeah, to sort of differentiate yourself from that, try and back yourself up with data, and just always try and be adding value and like speak about your niche, not just about generic stuff as well. I think that's you're always going to have a ceiling when you're just speaking about generic things, I think. Pain point posts, so those kind of posts aim to quickly solve your target audience's problems. So if you recently discovered a hack that you think might help other people in your space, and share it. I know that I did a post some time ago about a kind of Google Analytics hack that I learned from my mentor, and that went down really well. Like it just wasn't something that I would ever have known had he not told me about it, so I felt like I should share it. And yeah, people responded to that really well. And then finally, kind of niche value add posts, the other main one that I like. So these posts sort of help your target audience reach their career ambitions. So I guess it's just an educational piece, really, where people can really sort of get down into the granular details of things and potentially have those debates and like have those real deep, meaningful conversations about a specific topic. I think these are unlikely to be posts that are going to be liked by thousands of people, but like what you will get is kind of like rich engagement on them, which is they're sort of the posts that are really going to help you kind of like build a community. Obviously there are like a myriad of other posts that you can try, but I think with whatever you do, just try and have some kind of balance. So I remember like probably fairly on in my personal branding kind of like journey, I was like posting like really niche kind of like value add stuff all the time, and I think ultimately just people do get bored of the same kind of stuff all the time. If you can mix it up a little bit, like go for an odd crowd pleaser, like think about like if you're doing content, you think top, middle, and bottom of the funnel, like there should be some kind of like balance between, you know, the parts of the funnel that you're serving. So yeah, I think it's just key to have that balance, like have those niche value add posts, have the odd post, which is just kind of a general comment about like maybe the industry or like a problem that's facing people. And then, yeah, like people won't switch off as much as they would, I think, I think it's better if you're going to go down either of these routes. It's better to go down a niche value add route, because at least you're like giving people something that's going to be useful, but just definitely don't always do the kind of clickbait stuff that actually doesn't add anything. It's more like just contrarian or anything like that, because I think people just find it dull after a while. And yeah, on sort of like measuring the progress of your personal brand. So I think anybody who manages a company account on LinkedIn or has ever sort of seen that interface, you'll know that you get a breakdown of your analytics, but it's sort of like not incredible. Like the data points are sort of like sometimes, you know, the insights that you get from it isn't sometimes exactly up to what you're really expecting or wanted. And that's particularly the case with personal branding. So and your personal profile, because analytics is so they're so sort of like scattered, and they're not really you can't view them easily within the platform. I've heard about people building elaborate spreadsheets and things like that to track their personal brand, but I think that's kind of not the way to go about it, really, because I think you can end up spending more time maintaining that spreadsheet than you would actually just like engaging with other thought leaders in the community and creating content yourself. So what I use instead is a platform called Shield, which is, it's all capital letters. I think it's called Shield Analytics or Shield app. If you search either of those things, it should come up. I think you can try it out for free for 10 days before being billed. I think it's something around $10 a month. But what that does give you is a sort of a comprehensive breakdown of your year-to-date, month-to-date, week-to-date analytics. I think if we move on to the next slide, you should be able to see, a breakdown of mine. So this was the first 6 months of this year. You know, obviously on here I was starting from like 0, so there's a lot of green arrows on there, which is kind of stat padding in a way. But over time there'll be more peaks and troughs, I think. Obviously, hopefully you're going up in the right direction. You can also see a couple of orange/red arrows down here. We've got one on engagement rate. So like, if I can think about my engagement rate, if people are posting and viewing my posts and maybe not liking them or commenting on them, potentially, is it because like is my CTA strong enough? Like, am I calling people to really get involved with my posts, or are they just kind of like passively sort of like glancing over it? I think that's something that, like, with obviously an analytics platform, just like with anything else, you can sort of see the points where you maybe, the things that you aren't maybe doing as well as you could be, and then obviously you try and address those. And then I think on the next slide, I've got a breakdown of some of the top posts. Yeah, so here you can see it has a clear breakdown of your top posts sort of over the last few months. Obviously, seeing these means that you can kind of review the techniques that you've used in those posts and recreate them in the future. You can also like see the ones that are performing badly and sift those ones out. And particularly in the early stages of your kind of personal branding journey, that's like really important. You always want to be testing and kind of doubling down on the stuff that works and getting rid of the stuff that doesn't.
Okay, so next we have company branding. This is going to be my section. So, I've gone past it. So I run the Cognism social media accounts. So company branding is obviously a part of my day-to-day. And I wanted to speak about it because there's actually quite a lot of overlap between personal branding and company branding. So it makes sense just to do a quick section on how you can actually transfer some of what Greg's been talking about to building your company profile as well. So I've written there similar branding techniques for both personal and business accounts, and that's because there are similarities, things like goal setting and fleshing out your profile with company information, and measuring your success, which is massively important, gaining confidence in the area, identifying your voice, those things. There's a big overlap really between your own brand and what you're actually doing for your company. So first of all, I just want to talk about why it's important to work on your company's brand, and these may seem obvious, but it's things like positioning your company as a thought leader. So making sure that people recognize Cognism, for example, as the go-to place when you want to learn about like sales enablement, for example. You also want to establish your presence within a market in a non-invasive way, and I think it's important to have this as well, because the great thing about company branding is that people are coming to you, and it's good to have this as a balance with other marketing techniques or sales techniques where you're actually going and finding customers. It's nice to have that balance where people can actually come to you as well, and achieving organic, predictable growth. And that's the great thing about running a company brand or social media accounts, is that the growth that you get will increase over time, the more people you have following you, the bigger your following is, the more engagement you're going to get, and it all feeds into each other. So it becomes this really healthy source of attention for your company. But then also you have a few differences. So the key difference is the CTA. So the reason that you're actually creating your company profile for a reason other than its own growth. It's important. That's definitely a goal. You want people to recognize your company online. But there's also another focus, which is to try and get people from your social media accounts onto your website. That's where you want people ultimately, right? That's where you want the traffic to head. So there's this extra element in there, and to account for that, it means that you need to make sure that with company branding, you're constantly delivering value, and you need to have this real value-driven outlook on everything that you're doing. So the reason for this is if every day I'm saying, come take a look at something we've done, or sign up for this, or please do this for us, if I'm not balancing that out with, here's a bit of free information, here's something that we learned, here's something you might be interested in, then people will very quickly stop seeing our company as a value-adding company, and they'll quite quickly be put off by us. So it's important to have that balance there between delivering value and also delivering your CTA, and actually using that company to using that profile, sorry, to bring people to your company so they can see some of the other stuff you're doing. And then lastly, I think another difference is actually creating a company voice. So it's obviously important with your personal brand to work on your own personal voice and your tone that you use. But with a company, it's huge because it's sort of how people will see you as a company. So you need to make sure that you've got this right. And as with just about all things marketing, this is a case of measuring it. So trying out different things and finding out what works. So I've been working on the Cognizant brand for about a year, and what I'll do is I will, every post that I create, I will note down the tone that I've used, the type of post that I've done, the type of content that I'm delivering, the time of day. I mean, everything I'm doing, I'm putting down alongside the engagement that we're getting and the reach. So what I can do is I can quickly look over the last month and I can say, turns out that when we take this friendlier approach, or let's say this more businessy approach, or we promote videos, it tends to do well. Let's do more of that. Or this doesn't work, let's do less of that. And it means that month on month, you're actually creating a voice and tone based on results rather than based on the assumptions that you've made. So I think that's another important thing to do. And that's still the case for personal branding as well. You want to make sure that you're measuring what you're doing so you can continue to improve it and work on the best bits. Again, as with the rest of this presentation, if you've got any questions on company branding, then just leave them in the comments section, and we'll come back to those in just a sec.
I was just going to say on there.
Sorry,
when you mentioned adding value there, I think you made a really good point about like about adding value. And I was just going to say like what you want to be doing with any kind of content is like creating content for the platform you're on. So like if people are expecting free value on that platform, then if you're promoting loads of bottom of the funnel offers on that platform, then you're just not going to get the results that you need. Like you got to think about the intent of the person who's reading and consuming your content or watching your content, whatever, at the end of the day, because if you're not matching that intent, then there's just no way they're ever going to engage with you, and there's no way that you're ever going to be able to grow your brand unless you pay for followers, which some people do.
Yeah, no, you're spot on though, because so I'll try out a few different social media platforms, and I've been having some success recently with Reddit, and that was a learning curve because, and it's the same case with personal branding. When you're on Reddit, if you're really trying to get something from people who are reading your content, they're instantly put off because it's a free source of information. It's not company pages that are there, it's people learning from each other. So you've got to change tact to suit the area that you're in. It's a really good point, and it's definitely true as much with company branding as it is with personal branding. You know, you can afford to be more business-like on LinkedIn, but if you took that same style over to Twitter, it'd probably go down like a lead balloon. So it's all about identifying a different tone depending on the channel that you're using, for sure. And we have a few last extra personal branding tips. So back over to you for this section, Greg.
Yes. So just a few of these points didn't really fit neatly into the rest of the presentation. I've spoken about like kind of organically, I guess, building your personal brand, but there are like a few things that I did to boost my reach quickly. Number one was connecting with a lot of people with similar job titles to me and similar job titles to people in my team. Obviously, by doing that, you get exposure to content instantly if they obviously accept your connection request. As I said, if you just hit follow, that may be easier because it's less of a it's kind of less of an ask, and you also will get to see their content, which will be beneficial to you rather than relying on them to accept your request. And yeah, like just building up that base of kind of a network, I think helps you to get more relevant kind of like inbound connection requests rather than just getting like a lot of bots sending you requests, which is obviously not really useful. Number two, I would say like try and accept as many people as you can as long as they're relevant. People who do send connection requests, try and engage with them. If you've engaged with a post or something like that, try and take it off the post and maybe have a discussion with them over message, or try and just build those connections in other ways aside from like directly on posts and things like that. And number three, I haven't touched on it so much throughout this, but like aside from posting yourself, like engaging with other people's content is absolutely crucial, because if you're only putting stuff out yourself, then like people are not going to get the return, or they're not going to get if they're putting effort in engaging with you, then you have to give it back basically, otherwise you'll lose your following. You won't be able to sort of nurture your following, grow it. Like you've got to put the work in that way. I think a good way to sort of build connections in a more organic way is to comment on the posts of top influencers who are in your field. Strike up conversations with people in the comments, and then if people in the comments are sort of liking your comments, agreeing with them, replying, I would kind of hit connect with them, or at least hit follow there and then, because you'll be top of mind and the connection request will make sense. Also, likelihood is if they like your content one time, they'll like the content that you put out on your personal profile. And I have actually seen, I can't remember who put a post out about it, but a lot of people now are sort of putting a lot of time into their comments and then repurposing their comments as posts themselves. So that's a kind of like time hack that you could potentially use to get the most out of a comment potentially that you put in maybe 10-15 minutes into writing. So yeah, I think that was probably it from me.
Cool. So yeah, lastly, we just want to open it up to anyone here if they've got any questions. I haven't had any notifications of any through just yet, but if you've got one now, just click it. I'll just put it in the chat box there, and we'll get around to those. I'll just give you a minute to do that. And it's worth repeating now as well that this has all been recorded, so we'll send it through to you all afterwards. So if there was anyone that that couldn't make it or might benefit from listening to this, then send it through to them as well.
Yeah, and also if there are no questions now, feel free to sort of reach out on LinkedIn and ask those questions over message or whatever. If you prefer to do it that way, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, okay. Well, it doesn't look like anything's come through just here. So as Greg said, send them through to us privately. I'm Oscar Frost. You can find me on LinkedIn, and Greg Robertson. And that's Greg, Greig, just in case there's any confusion. So send those through to us there, and we'll get back to you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for coming.